Hey everyone, today I'm going to share my process for mixing an observed color. In this case, I'll be working with paint chips, and I really like using these ones that have the hole in them because you can hold them right over the swatches that you paint and see how well they match the color that you mixed. I'll be using three primary colors, yellow, magenta, and cyan, as well as neutral tint for convenience. This is a great exercise for figuring out how to adjust the value and temperature of color to get it as close as possible to the color that you observe in your subject, for example, or on these sample paint chips. Just a note about my pigments here. These three pigments, yellow, magenta, and cyan, give a very wide mixing range, which is really super helpful when you're trying to mix colors to match paint chips. If you try other triads, you might discover other interesting possibilities, so that's always useful. With regard to neutral tint, the version that I have leans a little purple, as you can see in that top stripe, so sometimes I need to modify it slightly with yellow to actually get it to be more neutral. And I'd like to make the point, I could mix a large puddle of gray using these three primaries, but it's kind of inconvenient to have to keep remixing it as I use it. It's a lot easier just to use neutral tint when I have to take a color that I mix darker. If I have to go lighter, I would always just add water. So that's just the way it works with watercolor. If you work in a different medium, some of the same principles in this video are going to apply, but you would use white paint instead of water to make it a lighter color. I painted swatches attempting to match several of these paint chips, so let's take a look at how close I managed to get, and you can see in some cases how many swatches it actually took me to get it right. You'll notice that in most of these I don't really manage to accomplish a perfect match. It can be really hard with watercolor because it dries lighter than it goes down when it's wet. And so unless you really know your pigments through lots and lots of practice, it can be very difficult to predict how much lightening you're going to get when the paint is dry. But all that said and done, the whole point of this is not to make a perfect match, it's to make the closest possible match, just as an exercise of understanding how to adjust colors to get as close as you can to what you want. As I lay the paint chip over each swatch, it's easy to see whether the swatch is too dark, too light, too warm, too cool, or just about perfect. And when I'm actually painting these swatches, that's the information that I use to adjust my color puddle before I paint the next swatch. For this first paint chip, it's closest to yellow, so my first step is going to be to mix a puddle of yellow. Then, because the swatch is more orange than yellow, I'm going to add some red because, as we learned in kindergarten, red and yellow make orange. But this is a bit dark, maybe? I'm going to add a little water and see if I get closer to the paint swatch, and I'll often hold this chip over to the puddles that I've got mixed to see if I'm even close. I suspect this might be too light because, as we know, it's going to dry lighter. So I've got to let that dry before I can compare it. But in the meanwhile, I think I need to go a little duller, so I'm going to add some neutral tint in there to go just a little duller. I don't think that's right. So I need to go a little warmer. And this is the process. I just keep adding and adjusting, comparing. Am I dark enough? Am I light enough? Am I warm enough? Am I cool enough? And using my three primary colors to make the necessary adjustments. Okay, here my swatches have dried, and as you can see, none of them are really a very good match, so it's back to the drawing board. Okay, once these latest swatches have dried, I can see that I'm still not quite there. I'm getting closer, but still need to do some more adjustments. Alright, now that all the swatches have dried, I can really compare them more accurately. Those two are really close. And I think this is the one. It's perfect almost. Yay! Okay, let's try this dark blue paint chip. The challenge here is to get it to be dark enough and still be rich enough in the blue itself without being overly saturated and bright. So we'll see how I manage to accomplish that. Okay, here I've painted a few extra swatches and they're dry so we can compare to see which ones are the closest match. And I think we have a winner. Okay, that wraps up this demo. I hope you found it interesting and maybe even inspiring. It's always fun and useful to play with your paints. Thanks for watching.